Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history, and today I'm out here with Mr. Dan, and we are in the Waverly Hall Cemetery that began as the old Mount Zion Church graveyard. Today we're out here to take a look at the grave, the very impressive grave of William Marshall. Previously we showed you the Oak Mountain Mill and the ruins of that mill, and we talked largely about its connection to the Milner family, but I thought today we'd come out and visit the grave of the man who actually built that mill, William Marshall.
Well, his name was William Blount Marshall, and Mr. Marshall was one of the very first settlers of Talbot County. He lived out what's now Highway 36. Back then it was known as the old Alabama Road. And Mr. Marshall settled there and built a very fine home on the Alabama Road. And the house stood until 1912 when it was struck by lightning and burned. But there is a photograph of it in one of the Rockaway books. Before the war between the states, Mr. Marshall was very involved in politics. And being a member of the Whig Party, he entertained a lot of politicians in his home because he operated a stagecoach stop there for a while, and the stagecoach would stop and he furnished meals for the travelers. And he entertained a lot of the politicians that would travel that road. The road went all the way through here and connected with another road and then continued on to New Orleans. Well, one of the most noted politicians that stopped there was Henry Clay, who was known as the Great Compromiser back in the days before the Civil War. And Mr. Clay, you know, if you read history, he was very well known in politics then, and he was really the one that kind of helped put the war off for a number of years with his compromising abilities. Well, he made a speech at Mr. Marshall's house that I understand gathered one of the largest crowds ever. And he made the speech from the balcony of the house. When Georgia was seceding from the Union, Mr. Marshall was a delegate from Talbot County to the Secession Convention that took place in Milledgeville. And as a delegate to that, he was to vote yes or no as to whether the state of Georgia would secede from the Union. And the records show that he abstained from voting. He did not vote. We don't know the reason, but we just know that he did not vote when it came to that. But he was one of the largest landowners around here. He was a businessman. He even owned a cotton gin manufacturing facility at his plantation right outside of town here. And he built cotton gins and sold them all over the South. He built wagons and buggies. He had a factory there that did that. We know where Mr. Marshall's home was, and as the crow flies, the location of the Oak Mountain Mill is not very far from his home. I'd say maybe 4 miles, maybe 4 miles or so. Back then there were roads that crisscrossed, and he didn't have far to travel to go to the mill. Now later on he took on several partners to the mill. He took on the first, I believe, was Dr. Henry King Stanford, who's buried just down the hill from here. And Dr. Stanford was his business partner in the mill, owning half of it. And later he took on another business partner, Mr. Leonard, who was part of the Rising Sun house family. You know, that you got the Rising Sun off the front of the house. That was another one of his business partners, was a member of the Leonard family from Talbot County. But he operated the mill, well, he owned the mill from the time that he built it up until his death, is my understanding. And then his family sold it upon his death. I do want to go to the courthouse and try to do a little bit more research into that and find out exactly who bought it, because it was owned by other families up down until the 1890s, I believe, when the Milner family bought it, and then they owned it for many years, decades.
And it's interesting too, on the subject of the mill, how long, and I mentioned this on the previous video, about how long it lasted, you know, from the 1840s for about 100 years,
It did.
a little bit over 100 years.
It sure did.
So his monument is absolutely impressive. This is the biggest one in the cemetery, I think you said earlier, right?
It is. This is the biggest one in this cemetery. Of course, each one of his children had their own monument. He had sons that passed away before he did, and he was able to afford nice monuments. And his wife is buried right here. She was Mary Annis Flournoy Marshall, and her family is, in other words, her parents, I believe, are buried right over there. She was the daughter of a preacher. It states on her grave that she joined the Methodist Church here at Mount Zion in 1831. No, 1833, excuse me.
I want to read this great epitaph on the side of Mr. Marshall's grave here. I was looking, hoping maybe there was a maker's mark on this stone. It's very impressive. You don't have any idea who put it up, do you?
No, but I will say it's very unusual for 1874. It almost makes me wonder if it was something that was left over in one of the monument houses in Columbus or Macon.
Right.
One of the monument companies had it in storage, and it had not sold, because by 1874 these had, well, there weren't too many families in the South that could afford this by 1874. According to his family, the family lost everything they had except their land, and they struggled to hold on to it. They lost everything they had in the Civil War, of course, financially, but he held on to the mill and his property.
By the way, I want to give a quick shout out to Olight, who sent me this new Seeker 4 flashlight to try out. They've been a consistent sponsor of us here in Adventures into History. Help us read these old epitaphs. This says, "Oh happy stroke that burst the bonds of clay." What's that first word there?
Darts.
Darts through the rending gloom the blaze of day, and wings the soul with boundless flight to soar, where dangers threat and fears alarm no more. For 55 years, a member of the church, which in him ever found a generous supporter, a kind husband, father, and friend, a useful, laborious, and public-spirited citizen, he lived to do good to others. His excellent sense, sound judgment, and inflexible integrity gained for him many positions of honor and trust. Yet he never lost his native modesty. His warm and generous heart gained for him many friends who will ever remember him with gratitude and admiration. That's a cool epitaph there.
It's very nice.
So are these like panels that are inserted into this?
They are. They're panels put together with those bronze or brass clips.
Yeah. It's pretty neat.
And a lot of these we see are usually leaning or, have sagged or fallen.
Right.
This one is in remarkable condition.
Yeah, it is.
It obviously has a very good foundation underneath it.
And I think these are one of the few that still have the urn on top. This
Yeah,
hasn't been damaged.
Still intact and undamaged. And that's amazing too, because there used to be cedar trees all over the top of this hill.
Yeah.
And a snowstorm in 1974 took down almost all of them.
Oh, really?
And a lot of them, when they fell, they damaged things around here. You can see the fence right over there that a tree fell on.
Right. All right, so we'll take a look at Mary's grave real quick, a little bit closer. This is daughter of Reverend Francis and Anise Flournoy, born in Morgan County, Georgia, August 25th, 1808. Joined the M.E. Church at Mount Zion right here, 1833. Died May 22nd, 1890. A consistent member of the M.E. Church for 57 years. In all the relations of life, as wife, mother, Christian friend, truly she hath done what she could. And this is in memory of James F. Marshall, born March 24th, 1836, converted to Christ and joined church 1858, and died October 7th, 1908. He was ready for the summons and fell asleep in Jesus. Now, would he have been a son?
Yes, that's his son. That's James and Rachel Rachel and he had a number of children, and one of their sons was the father of Sarah and William Marshall, who lived in the old home place out there. You remember them. We of course, were good friends with them. And I used to visit the house out there and talk to them about history. They were a set of twins, William and Sarah. And William never married. Miss Sarah married once and then I think divorced and went back home. But anyway, they were both born in 1908, if I remember correctly. They're buried down the hill with their parents. But they were very interesting, both of them. They were a walking history book together. And they knew a lot of the history of this area. Yeah. And it's amazing that the property and the house and all is still in that family.
Right.
Ever since the day it was built. Well, ever since the day it was established. I mean, the original house, like I said, burned, lightning struck it, then they rebuilt the house on the same spot, and they lived there the rest of their lives.
And this is William B., son of J.F. and R.A. Marshall, born June 25th, 1871, died April 21st, 1902. He was a member of M.E. Church. Look at the, I guess just the grain in the stone. Isn't that different? What kind of stone is this? Is it? See how it's like, is this one been like sandblasted or something?
It almost looks like it.
Yeah.
Someone might have cleaned it once.
Looks oddly textured. And back here we've got a little child's grave. Right here in this plot, and I can't, let's see if I can see the sacred to the memory of John H. Bryan, infant babe of J.H. and A.M.F. Bryan, who departed this life December 24th. That one's really hard to read. 18, I don't know. Maybe it'll show up on camera. I
think it's 1852, because this is the mother of that child.
Okay.
The mother died in September of 1852, and I think that child lived until December.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure the relationship between this lady and the Marshalls. I know there's a connection between the Marshalls and the Bryans, but you see who her parents were.
Yeah, the Mahones. Thomas and Nancy Mahone.
The three brothers that came to this area were, let's see, Peter, Roland, and Thomas Mahone, the three Mahone brothers.
I think Roland Mahone is the one we talk about the most often.
Yes, Roland Mahone is buried right there.
Oh, is he?
Unmarked, but that's it right there where that pile, well, used to be a pile of rocks there, but
Oh, wow.
one of the former cemetery caretakers removed it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Sacred to the memory of Amanda M.F. Bryan, daughter of Thomas and Nancy Mahone, and wife of John H. Bryan, who departed this life September 2nd, 1852, aged 25 years, 10 months, and 1 day. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
And this is another example of, I can remember not too many years ago, there was a little urn that sat up here. And I guess because it was easily accessed, somebody picked it up and carried it away.
Yeah.
I don't know what anybody would want with such or why they want to steal things, but unfortunately, people do. There was also one on top of that baby grave, but
Right.
it's been gone for a long time.
Oh, there's one. I almost skipped this one. The Nanny M. Marshall, born June 6, 1859, died May 27th, 1863. So she's about the earliest burial in this plot. Pre-Civil War grave there. Nope, I'm definitely wrong on that because we got 1862 here. Stephen F. Marshall, born January 25th, 1839, died March 5th, 1862. Yes, I am sad and weary now, but let me not repine, because a spirit loved so well is earlier blessed than mine. My path may darken as it will, I shall not much deplore, since thou art where the ills of life can never reach, thee more.
I can't remember if they told me that he died in the war or if he got sick, came home from the war and died. I can't remember. I've got it written down at home somewhere.
In memory of William S. Marshall, son of William B. and M.D. Is that D. Marshall? Who departed this life March 20th, 1855, aged 26 years, 8 months, and 9 days. Many have lived longer, but few more upright. Wow. So that's the oldest grave in this plot. One more that's almost unreadable. Can you come over here and hold that? I'll try to get down there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to read it. Do you know who's buried here?
No, I don't remember.
This is, I see Marshall, but let's see
If I put a shadow on it,
Yeah.
will that help?
it will. Sacred to the memory of. Can you see any better than me up there?
It almost looks like it says Rebecca. Rebecca V. Marshall.
Yeah, I can. I can't make that out at all, but I see V, and I see an R.
Parted this life. And that says something. Daughter of William B. and M.A. Marshall.
Yep. That one's just almost completely eroded away. But there's some other graves that we have to see out here, including the Flournoys and his business partner, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
There's a baby buried over here.
I missed another one?
Yeah.
Oh, snap. It's Francis Flournoy Marshall, son of James F. and R.A. Marshall, born January 15th, 1884, died August 28th, 1884. Thou art gone, little darling, sweet child of our love, from earth's fancy strand. What is this word right here? From earth's something strand?
From Earth's. You got your line.
Yeah.
Fairy?
Yeah, I guess so.
F-A-I-R-Y.
From earth's fairy strand to bright mansions above. Some interesting epitaphs out here. So, do you know? Is there anyone buried here?
Not to my knowledge, but this is odd that they took in this little area with the fence.
Yeah.
I think, that child right there is the child of those two over there, Mr. and Ms. James F. Marshall. And I'm wondering if they had reserved this for another son that is, or their oldest son, who's buried down the hill with the other Marshalls. There's another Marshall plot down there.
Gotcha.
This was probably originally intended for him, but he had a number of children that did not marry. So I feel like he wanted a plot that they could all be together in.
Right.
So they're down the hill a little further.
All right, so we're a little bit further down from the Marshall grave. You can see Mr. Williams' grave right there. But we found some more direct connections to Mr. William Marshall here. So this stone right here reads, the infant son of William B. and M.A. Marshall. And though I could not stay with you, yet you can come to me. But then on the back side, it says, see the design carved into the top there. It says, in memory of Joseph Marshall, son of William B. and M.D. Marshall, who departed this life April 9th, 1834, aged 6 months and 22 days. You must not weep for me, mother, for I shall happy be. So he died in 1834. So Dan, that's M.D. Marshall there. And he was married to M.A. Marshall.
This grave here is Mr. William Marshall's first wife. Now his second wife is buried over there beside him was a Flournoy. Her maiden name was Flournoy. This one, I understand, her maiden name was Turner. But this one, the stone is illegible now, but it up till I'd say 20 years ago, you could still read it. It said sacred to the memory of Mary.
It's Martha. Martha D.
Martha. Okay, Mary was his second wife.
Yeah.
Martha is his first. Okay, Martha D. I can see it from here now.
And she died in 1833.
Uh-huh.
And she married Mr. Marshall in 1817, and he married his second wife
If I shadow this,
in 1845.
it says sacred to the memory of Martha D. Marshall.
Yep. Is got to be wife of William Marshall.
It almost looks like it says consort of, which would mean
Consort is when the wife dies before the husband, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Consort of. That's right. William B. Marshall. Well, that's the date right there, if you can read that. But
I cannot.
it's 1830 something, I know. And of course, that's completely unreadable now.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's his first wife and a child, a son,
Yes.
Joseph.
So this is the son of his second wife, M.A. Marshall there,
Mhm.
but also the son with his first wife, M.D. Marshall, who died a little bit after his mother died. So we're going to go find his second wife's parents.
Okay, Reverend Flournoy must not be buried here then. But his wife is, and Mrs. Marshall's sister is buried here as well, Sophia. But anyway, Annis Flournoy, this name right here, Annis, that carried on in the Marshall family way down for several generations.
Annis Flournoy, wife of Reverend Francis Flournoy, daughter of John and Martha Ware, mother of Sophia, Mary, and Samuel Flournoy. She was born in Chesterfield County, Virginia, August 10th, 1867, and died March 17th, 1843. No ostentation marked her tranquil way. Her duties all discharged without display. She fell asleep. God gave, he took, he will restore. He doeth all things well. So here's the daughter, Sophia Lola Flournoy, daughter of Reverend Francis and Annis Flournoy, born in Chesterfield County, Virginia, July 20th, 1798, died July 1876. It's interesting that there's no specific day on there for her death date. You see that more with a birth date without a specific day, not usually a death date. A consistent member of the Baptist Church for 46 years. Life's duty done as sinks the day. Light from its load the spirit flies, while heaven and earth combine to say, how blessed the righteous when she dies. So she was a Baptist, and was Reverend Francis Flournoy a Baptist?
He was a Baptist also. And I will say that the First Baptist Church in this area was just across the road from the Marshall Plantation. It was called County Line Baptist Church. And it was about the same age, maybe a year or two younger than the Waverly Hall Church here, the Mount Zion Methodist Church. Gotcha. But that Baptist church out there attracted a lot of members, and they were members there, but there was no cemetery there. So when they passed away, they buried them here. But I remember Mr. William and Miss Sarah telling me that that church was there when they were little, and the doors were standing wide open on it. Oh, wow. It was abandoned, and they used to pass by there coming to Waverly Hall every day. But it was on the road where you turn to go to Rough Edge.
Okay.
It was, you turn off the highway, and it was on the right.
Gotcha. That would have been a sight to behold, I'm
Uh-huh.
sure, seeing that old church.
But I don't know why the Baptist congregation kind of played out there in that area. Most of the folks out there joined Methodist Church, which was close by. But for the Baptist church to be directly across from his farm, Mr. Marshall and his family all traveled every Sunday, and every time anything took place at church, they traveled 3 miles, 4 miles from there to here to church every Sunday.
Right. Do we know where Reverend Flournoy is buried?
I don't. He was quite a well-known minister, and he ought to have a marked grave somewhere. Somebody probably shouldn't have problems finding him if he has a marker on his grave.
We'll have to find him one day.
He moved on, I guess, when she passed away and continued preaching. But you can stand here and see the indentions of all the other graves in this row. This cemetery was mapped, so there's supposed to be, they did the ground penetrating radar here. So there's supposed to be a steel pin at each one of these.
Gotcha.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 graves in a row right here.
Yeah.
And that one right there is 6.
All right, so for reference sake, there is Mr. Marshall's grave way up there on top of the hill, the biggest monument out here. You can't miss it. And we are down at his business partner in the mill, correct?
That's correct. And his name was, according to the family, his name was Dr. Henry King Stanford. Now, he had a great-grandson that became president of the University of Georgia.
Oh, really?
And his name was Henry King Stanford. But anyway, Dr. Stanford was a medical doctor here. He was one of the early doctors in Waverly Hall. And his house was just out here, where you turn on the 36 and that old dirt road turned off to the left, which was the old road to the Oak Mountain Mill. It's abandoned now.
Yeah.
And there's a house in the fork where the Eichmann family lived for many years. But anyway, when you turned off to the left on that dirt road, you went down there just a little ways, and his house was on the left. It was abandoned, and eventually it just rotted to the ground. But that road continued on and became what's now called Alabama Road. And that went all the way to the Oak Mountain Mill and kept going.
Gotcha.
But anyway, it's also legend that his name was Dr. Hezekiah Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have also heard that his name was Hezekiah Henry King, and I've also heard that his name was Herod King Stanford. So these are all different, and this all comes from members of the family, because Sarah and William Marshall, that we were talking about earlier, their grandmother was a Stanford. She was his daughter. So that was the family connection there, is Mr. William B. Marshall's daughter-in-law. This was her father. So there was a family connection between the Marshalls and the Stanfords. So he took Dr. Stanford on as a partner, and I guess he was business partner with him until Mr. Marshall passed away, and then, or maybe until he took on Mr. Leonard in Talbot. But anyway, this is Dr. Stanford's first wife over here, who was it's almost illegible now, but I believe she was does that say Reed? It says daughter of...
I can't tell. Maybe see if you can put a shadow on it, or we can light it up.
No, that's not even...
This has got to be, out of all the places we've been, one of the places with the hardest to read graves.
And I attribute that to the fact that this was all protected by cedar trees for so many years. And once all the cedar trees were gone, the elements could get to this. But also, I think somebody came out here one time and gave some of these families a sales pitch that sandblasting was a good idea to clean these old slabs. And they said, sure. And once it was sandblasted, it opened up the pores in the marble to the elements, and now you have sandstone.
Yeah.
Instead of, the marble has just become grainy because the surface of it is gone.
And we've certainly seen several out here that were definitely sandblasted.
Put a shadow there and let's see if we can shine a light on it. And Stanford. That's about all you can read is her last name. It says daughter of, I can't tell.
And his second wife is over here.
Yeah, I'm sure that on Ancestry there's a record of her, who she was. But this second wife, her name was Artemisia.
Artemisia, wife of H.K. Stanford and daughter of J. and E. Sparks, aged 53 years and 5 days. She was a worthy member of the Methodist Church from early girlhood. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. It doesn't have a birthday or death date on there.
No.
Just an age.
She died at age 53, but she was the daughter of Mr. and Miss Sparks, and that was the families up in what's now Shiloh, or out from Shiloh. You know Bethel Cemetery?
Yeah.
That's where all the Sparks are buried
Gotcha.
there. Some of them buried in Shiloh at the old Baptist Cemetery, but she would have been a member of Bethel since she was a member of the Methodist Church from girlhood. Her parents are probably buried out there. Bethel is out on Johnson Mill Road. We've been there, you remember?
Yeah, so I don't think we've ever filmed it though.
Really?
Yeah, we never did.
We need to go do that.
We do. And now's the time of year to do it too, because that one's...
It's grown up really bad.
I wanted to point out something on Dr. Stanford's grave. What is that emblem right there? You see that?
Unless that's some kind of old medical emblem, I don't know.
I've never seen one before.
He had a medical practice and a drugstore here.
Maybe it is.
I don't know. It's wings with a square box and an X with a dot in the middle.
Yeah.
And he had a son named Lewis Weaver Stanford, who was the Waverly Hall physician for many, many years. And Dr. Stanford died in the mid-1920s. And he was married to Mr. William Owen's daughter. You know, they're buried over the hill there behind the Marshalls. And they were neighbors to the Marshall family. And Dr. Lewis Weaver Stanford was very prominent in town, very wealthy. But at the time of his death, his grave was not marked. So it's not even known where he and his wife are buried here.
All right, everybody, well, I hope you enjoyed this further look at some of the people that are connected with the amazing Oak Mountain Mill we recently visited, seeing the ruins. We're going to visit the Milner family cemetery as well and see some of them. So I think it's really interesting, all the connections associated with that place that
Lots of connections.
ran for so long. Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on another adventure into history.